Hey neighbor, welcome back to Surprise Release TV! My name is John, and today I'm covering the second unexpected album and the 9th overall from none other than Taylor Swift. Evermore is here, seemingly out of nowhere. I'm excited to talk about it because there's a lot to unpack, so without further ado, let's give it a review. Despite my conflicted feelings on her output in recent years, Folklore dropped my jaw and became not only one of my absolute favorite records of 2020, it's my favorite overall in her entire discography. I know, I am just as shocked as you, but it happened, it's real, and honestly, I'm kinda surprised but awesomely caught off guard that she's putting such big displays of artistry up on a billboard this far into her career. Once again, she's headed deep into the forest for another round with Aaron Dessner and other members of the National, along with collaborations from Haim, Marcus Mumford, and Bon Iver. Jack Antonoff only has one writing and production credit for Gold Rush on this record. That's a bold move, but it also shows how much confidence she had in Aaron Dessner. I mean, did anyone really have Taylor releasing 2 albums with heavy involvement from the National on their 2020 bingo card? Folklore and Evermore are sister albums, one in black and white, one in color. There's so many interesting facets to explore with an album as lyrical as this, so with Folklore being the older sister that saw Taylor reimagining her personal life through the eyes of other women in history, it seems like Evermore mostly forgoes the introspection to instead write fictional stories that further cements what a fantastic songwriter and storyteller she is. I love that Taylor seems to have let go of so many of the burdens she was dragging around for years, for a decade really. This is healing, this is getting out of your own head, this is yet another moment of catharsis that deserved a sequel. I have to admit that I was a little bit unsure of certain parts of Evermore on my first couple of listens. It felt more like leftovers from Folklore. But now that I've had the chance to sit with it longer, it's more like going back for seconds at a fantastic holiday feast instead of just leftovers. Maybe it's not quite as special as what we got the first time, but that doesn't mean that these songs are directionless or dull at all. I'm legitimately happy that Taylor ran even further with the country influences that blend chamber rock and folk to sound less like what you'd hear on the radio and more like mature, natural evolutions from an artist that's been at the top of the musical throne for nearly 2 decades. One of the best things about this companion album is just how pleasing it resonates with the ear. So much atmosphere is breathed in via eclectic guitar loops, graceful touches of the cello, some really pretty piano, and of course Taylor herself showing so much poise and her ability to drive home the subject matter in more detailed stories in a much more subdued, low-key manner. You know, it's kind of tough to pin down exactly why this album works and really does get better the closer you listen, but I think a lot of that boils down to Taylor's unrelenting passion for dropping little hints, clues, and Easter eggs throughout her catalog. With this being her celebration of turning 31, which is the opposite of her favorite number 13, you know she was gonna throw some curveballs on the mix, and I'm not the one to really sit down and explain them all, leave that to a channel that does that type of thing. They're not entirely crucial to the experience, but once you pick up on some of the little notes, nods, and winks to the audience, you can't help but smile. She rewards you for being a longtime fan. Sometimes this album can veer off into the mundane, the done before, the musically dull and played out, with Dorothea being an unfortunate example of background fodder, and Closure failing to provide a hook before thankfully giving way to the tearjerker swan song Evermore. These forgettable moments aren't commonplace though, which is kind of crazy and makes it all that much more impressive. 2 lengthy albums within 5 months of each other back to back with barely any skippables. For the sole reason of me doubting the general public and knowing that this song is going to get slept on and it's going to get slept on hard, let's start the track list breakdown by praising the western-leaning cowboy like me. Ironically, I get some wide-open Montana-like John Mayer vibes from this campfire tale, a song that's maybe painted from the eyes of Taylor Swift, maybe somebody else entirely. It's kind of this distant love story tale that's imperfect just like any real relationship is. The instrumentation is rich with steel guitar, cellos, piano, and some light uses of the harmonica, which was a really nice addition, and beyond that, I did not expect Marcus Mumford of all people to aid in the backing vocal department, but there he is, sounding great right alongside Taylor. Sister Act Hyam are longtime friends of hers, so I wasn't at all shocked to see them get a feature on the album. The actual surprise was that Nobody No Crime turned out to be one of the best songs here, and it's a country outlaw anthem in the vein of the Chicks. Fuck yes, the music speaks for itself this time. Let's rewind a bit because the first 4 songs on the album are what kept me on the line, coming back, and eventually won me over to loving what she had in mind. Willow is one of Taylor Swift's best singles ever, and I'm so happy that it is the one getting that single push. Not that I didn't love Cardigan last time, I actually really liked that song, but this is the superior of the two. And the way that guitar loop cuts right through your cerebral, it's just stapled to my head, and the hook is sugary sweet meets folk pop perfection. 'Tis the Damn Season features some breathy vocals in tandem with a cycling electric guitar that bleeds with personal torment. It's mental warfare that's only continued to grow on me. Gold Rush is the Jack Antonoff track from the album, and you'd think it would stick out like a sore thumb considering how different it shapes up, but it really doesn't. I love the majestic transition from the synthy verses to that silky hook. It's fucking beautiful and cinematic and gorgeous all around, and that's really all there is to it. Now there's 2 songs everyone's gonna be asking for my thoughts on, and I think you know why. Those being Champagne Problems and Taylor's track 5 offering, Tolerated. Good news first, Champagne Problems sounds about as enchanting as anything that you could dream up from the pop icon. The descriptive nature of 2 high school sweethearts going down separate paths at a fork in the road feels familiar, but not overwhelming, a problem that the fan favorite track 5 sadly does have. Tolerated makes use of vocal melodies and instrumentation we've already heard so many times over from Taylor, but with this being the slot she normally reserves for the most vulnerable piece of the puzzle, it falls short. It falls short in the songwriting and the atmosphere. Even in the vocal department, I can't help but feel disinterested and even slightly annoyed after a solid 10 times through the record. Crucify me all you want, but it's one of the weaker songs on Evermore. The back half of this album grew on me exponentially, so let's dig more into that before I wrap things up. Ivy was a cool song with a lot of fun ideas, but I will say that the cursing feels a bit excessive. 5 goddams get dropped and it loses the shock value after the hook. In fact, I wish they'd been only used on the bridge since they actually sell the extra release of tension there, but not so much on the chorus. The 2 male counterpart vocal collabs, Coney Island with The National and Evermore with Bon Iver, are marvelous to take in, with the latter bringing some tears to my eyes. I'll definitely admit that. It gave me the closure that the song before that, actually titled that, didn't provide. But the final song I have to give a shout out to is Marjorie, track 13 on the album release that saw Taylor turning 31, which is the backwards flip of her favorite number, 13. What a sincere, touching ode to a grandparent that she credits with gifting her an entire career. Evermore takes its time in a well-paced effort that somehow doesn't feel rushed at all despite the insanely fast turnaround between albums. There's rumors of a 3rd record, Woodvale, creeping in the distance, so we'll see if it ends up being a trilogy, but for now, I really liked a majority of this record, and I'm giving this a strong 4 out of 5. A great record, but an obvious but also slight step down from Folklore. If you enjoyed my review, then do me a favor, take a split second and hit that like button, subscribe for the love of music, and consider supporting me on Patreon, which is linked down below. Thanks to my current $50 patrons Brandon, Dayton, Cleo, and Seth, I hope you have a fantastic holiday season. 'Tis the damn season, and I'll be back soon with more on ARTV.